I'm talking about the stunning, chilling, and incredibly precise declaration made by Secretary of Defense, or as he now pointedly calls himself, the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth. On Thursday, inside the cabinet room with President Trump sitting right across from him, Pete Hegseth didn't mince words. He didn't offer us the usual bureaucratic word salad about strategic patience or de-escalation. He looked the president in the eye, and he looked the American people in the eye through the cameras. And he delivered a message that was clearly intended for one audience, the supreme leader in Tehran. He said, and I am quoting him exactly here, "We will be prepared to deliver whatever this president expects of the War Department." Whatever this president expects. Let that sink in. In the context of Donald Trump, a man who has already ordered a massive armada to steam toward the Iranian coast, a man who has tweeted that time is running out, and a man who just authorized the snatch and grab of a sitting head of state in Venezuela, whatever he expects is a phrase that should send a shiver down the spine of every geopolitical analyst on the planet. Today, we are going to tear this statement apart. We are not just going to read the headlines. We are going to look at the logistics, the precedents, and the terrifying reality of what Hegseth calls reestablishing deterrence. We are going to talk about the massive armada. We are going to talk about Operation Midnight Hammer. We are going to talk about the renaming of the Department of Defense to the Department of War, and why that isn't just semantics, it's a declaration of intent. Let's start with the setting. This was the first cabinet meeting of 2026. The atmosphere in Washington is already electric. You have the successful, albeit controversial, capture of Nicolas Maduro on January 3rd, still dominating the news cycle. That operation, which Hegseth described as the most sophisticated, powerful raid in world history, has emboldened this administration in a way we haven't seen since arguably the 2003 invasion of Iraq. They feel invincible. They feel that the old rules of international sovereignty and red lines simply do not apply to them because they have the capability to erase them. So when Hegseth sits down at that table, he isn't speaking as a rookie secretary trying to find his footing. He is speaking as the architect of the Maduro raid. He has blood on his jersey and he has a win on the scoreboard. And when the topic turns to Iran, notice the shift in tone. President Trump asked him about the situation. Now, usually a defense secretary says, "Mr. President, we have assets in the region. We are monitoring threats." Standard boilerplate. Hegseth didn't do that. He went straight to the ultimatum. He said they should not pursue nuclear capabilities, and we will be prepared to deliver whatever this president expects of the War Department. He didn't say Defense Department. Did you catch that? He said War Department. You know, for those of you who know your history, the U.S. Department of Defense was originally called the Department of War until 1947. Changing it to Defense was a branding decision after World War II to make American hegemony look more protective and less aggressive. By reverting to the term War Department, even unofficially, Hegseth and Trump are signaling a psychological shift. They are telling the world, we are not here to defend static lines. We are here to wage war if necessary. We are here to project power. It is an offensive posture, not a defensive one. And what is that posture backing up? It's backing up a specific demand. No nuclear weapons. Now we know that Iran has been inching closer to breakout capability. We know that since the collapse of the previous nuclear talks, the centrifuges at Fordow and Natanz have been spinning. But the Trump administration isn't interested in a new JCPOA. They aren't sending pallets of cash or diplomats to Vienna hotels. They are sending the USS Abraham Lincoln. They are sending B-2 bombers. And they are sending a message that the Venezuela model, a decapitation strike or a regime-shattering raid, is on the table for Iran. Hegseth explicitly linked the two scenarios. He used the Maduro capture as a warning to the Ayatollah. He said, no other military in the world could have executed that raid. No other president would have been willing to empower those warriors that way. He is drawing a direct line between the extraction of Maduro from Caracas and the potential future of the Iranian leadership. He is saying, we can get to you. We can reach you. Borders don't matter. Air defense doesn't matter. If the president gives the order, we will deliver. But let's look at the armada. President Trump tweeted about it on Wednesday. He called it a massive armada heading to Iran. Now, in naval terms, we usually call this a carrier strike group, but armada implies something larger, something more historical. We are seeing a convergence of assets in the Arabian Sea and the Persian Gulf that rivals the buildup to Desert Storm. You have the carrier air wings, you have the guided missile destroyers, you have the submarines that you don't see lurking beneath the Strait of Hormuz. Why is this happening now? Why January 2026? It's the intersection of three critical timelines. First, the Iranian internal timeline. The regime is weak. We've seen the protests. We've seen the woman life freedom movement morph into a full-blown economic and political crisis for the mullahs. The crackdown has been brutal. Thousands dead, tens of thousands arrested. The regime is cornered, and a cornered regime often sprints toward a nuclear bomb as an insurance policy. The Trump administration sees this weakness. They smell blood in the water. They believe that a strong external push could collapse the house of cards in Tehran. Second, the Israeli timeline. Prime Minister Netanyahu has been pushing for a green light to strike Iranian nuclear facilities for years. Under the previous administration, that light was always red or yellow. Under Trump and Hegseth, the light is flashing green. In fact, Hegseth referenced Operation Midnight Hammer, the strikes from June 2025. He reminded the room, when President Trump said, "We're not getting a nuclear Iran," he meant it, and that operation was a limited strike. It was a warning shot. The implication now is that the warning shots are over. The next shot is the kill shot. Third, the global energy timeline. Look at the oil markets. Prices just hit a 6-month high. The markets are baking in a war. They are pricing in the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. When the money moves, you know the threat is real. Traders aren't listening to the press secretaries. They are watching the satellite feeds of naval movements, and what they see is a siege force assembling. But here is the danger. Here is the terrifying variable that Hegseth's confidence glosses over. Iran is not Venezuela. Nicolas Maduro had a crumbling army and a populace that largely hated him, but he didn't have a proxy network that spanned the entire Middle East. He didn't have Hezbollah in Lebanon with 150,000 rockets pointed at Tel Aviv. He didn't have the Houthis in Yemen who can shut down the Red Sea. He didn't have Shia militias in Iraq and Syria who can overrun U.S. bases in a matter of hours. When Hegseth says the Pentagon is prepared to deliver, he is talking about the kinetic capability to strike targets in Iran. I have no doubt the U.S. military can turn Fordow into a crater. I have no doubt our B-21 Raiders and B-2 Spirits can bypass Iranian air defenses. But is the War Department prepared for the day after? Are they prepared for the asymmetrical war that will explode across the region? This is the question that nobody in that cabinet meeting seemed to ask. The rhetoric was all about offense. It was all about delivering on the president's expectations. It was about the glory of the Maduro raid. It was, frankly, hubristic. Hegseth's language suggests a belief in shock and awe 2.0. The idea is that if you hit Iran hard enough, if you demonstrate enough speed and violence, and to use Trump's words, the regime will simply fold. They believe that deterrence has been lost because America was too soft, and that by showing the Maduro capability, deterrence is restored. Hegseth said, "We're having to rebuild how our enemies perceive us." He believes that fear is the only currency that matters in the Middle East. And perhaps in the short term, he's right. Perhaps the Ayatollah looks at Maduro in a U.S. jail cell and thinks twice. But perhaps he thinks the opposite. Perhaps he thinks, they are coming for me anyway. I have nothing to lose. I might as well fire everything I have. That is the gamble. That is the toss of the dice that Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth are making with global stability. Let's dig deeper into the preparedness claim. What does it actually mean to be prepared for Iran in 2026? It means cyber warfare. Before a single missile flies, the U.S. Cyber Command will likely go dark on Iran's grid. We are talking about crippling their command and control, blinding their radar, and possibly shutting down their power infrastructure. Hegseth knows this domain well. The modern War Department fights in the digital space as much as the physical one. It means missile defense integration. The reason we are seeing this armada is not just for offense. It's a floating shield. The Aegis systems on those destroyers are there to intercept the barrage of ballistic missiles that Iran will fire back. We saw a preview of this in previous years, but the scale now would be exponential. The U.S. is betting that its technology can swat down Iran's swarm. It means special operations. If Hegseth is citing the Maduro raid, we have to assume that plans are drawn up for direct action on Iranian soil, not an invasion. Trump has no appetite for a million-man march on Tehran, but targeted raids, seizing nuclear material, extracting high-value targets, sabotaging underground bunkers. These are the missions that the empowered warriors Hegseth talks about are training for right now. And let's look at the political dimension of this preparedness. Hegseth's comments were also a loyalty test. In the Trump cabinet, you don't survive by being the voice of caution. You survive by being the enforcer. By stating, we will deliver whatever this president expects, Hegseth is positioning himself as the ultimate instrument of Trump's will. He is removing any daylight between the Pentagon and the White House. In previous administrations, you often had a friction between the generals and the politicians. The generals would say, "Sir, here are the risks, here are the limitations." Hegseth is erasing that friction. He is saying, you name it, we do it. This removes the internal brakes on military action. If Trump wakes up tomorrow and decides that the massive armada should strike, there will be no pushback from the Secretary of Defense. There will be only execution. This is why the phrase War Department matters. A Defense Department defends, a War Department wars. It is a subtle but profound shift in institutional culture that Hegseth is driving. He wants a military that is leaner, meaner, and less concerned with the bureaucratic niceties of international diplomacy. He wants a military that kills people and breaks things efficiently. And the world is noticing. Turkey is panicking. President Erdogan is on the phone trying to broker a three-way meeting because he knows that if war breaks out, Turkey shares a border with the chaos. The refugee crisis alone would destabilize his country. The Europeans are paralyzed. They designated the IRGC a terrorist organization, yes, but they are terrified of a full-scale conflict that cuts off their energy supplies. But look at who is silent: China, Russia. They are watching. If the U.S. commits its armada to a war with Iran, that is a massive commitment of resources. It ties down the U.S. Navy in the Persian Gulf. What happens in the Taiwan Strait while we are busy in Tehran? What happens in Eastern Europe? Hegseth claims that these operations send a message to every capital around the world. He's right, but the message is complex. The message is that the U.S. is unpredictable, aggressive, and willing to use force. For allies, that can be reassuring or terrifying. For adversaries, it accelerates their own preparations for war. We also need to talk about the nuclear ultimatum. Trump's post was clear: no nuclear weapons. This is an absolute. It leaves no room for ambiguity. If intelligence confirms that Iran is assembling a device, and some reports suggest they are weeks away, then Trump has boxed himself in. He cannot back down without looking weak. And Hegseth just told us that the military is ready to ensure he doesn't have to back down. This creates a use it or lose it dynamic. If Iran thinks an attack is inevitable, they might rush to detonate a test device to prove they have it. If the U.S. thinks Iran is rushing, they have to strike before that happens. It is a classic security dilemma spiraling out of control in real time. And let's not forget the domestic angle. The U.S. is polarized, but nothing rallies a base or divides a nation like a war. The Maduro capture was popular in many circles because it was clean, fast, and humiliated a dictator. A war with Iran would not be clean. It would not be fast. It would be messy. Hegseth is betting that the U.S. military is so superior, so rebuilt, that it can achieve a quick victory that validates the Trump doctrine. He is betting that the Midnight Hammer and the Maduro raid are the new standard, not the exceptions. But history is littered with defense secretaries who thought the war would be easy, who thought they would be greeted as liberators, who thought shock and awe would be enough. Hegseth is a student of history. He knows this. Yet he stood there and gave the president a blank check. Whatever this president expects. That statement is the most dangerous sentence spoken in Washington in decades. It effectively transfers the entire war-making power of the United States Congress, the entire strategic calculus of the Joint Chiefs, into the hands of one man's expectations. If Trump expects a blockade, done. If Trump expects a surgical strike, done. If Trump expects regime change, done. The Pentagon is no longer a deliberative body. It is a delivery service. And the package they are preparing to deliver to Iran is full of high explosives. So what happens next? We watch the Armada. When those ships reach their strike positions, the clock starts. We watch the rhetoric from Tehran. Do they blink? Do they come to the table in Ankara and negotiate away their nuclear program? Or do they dig in? And we watch Pete Hegseth. He has staked his reputation and the lives of thousands of American service members on the claim that he is prepared. If the order comes and the operation goes sideways, if a carrier is hit, if the strait is closed, if the conflict spirals, that quote will be his political epitaph. But for now, the message is clear. The Trump administration is done talking, the guns are drawn, the safety is off, and the Secretary of War is waiting for the command to fire. This isn't saber rattling anymore. This is the drumbeat of war, and it's getting louder by the hour. We will continue to monitor the movements of the USS Abraham Lincoln and the B-2 bomber wings. We will continue to track the diplomatic cables flying between Ankara, Washington, and Tehran. But make no mistake, the decision has likely already been made. The only variable left is the trigger. I want to know what you think. Is Hegseth right? Is this the only way to deal with Iran? Does the Maduro model work on a regional power? Or are we walking blindly into a catastrophe that will set the Middle East on fire for another 20 years? Let me know in the comments below. This is a conversation we need to have because the mainstream media is too busy talking about the politics of the cabinet meeting to understand the war that was just declared inside of it. Stay alert, stay informed. And remember, in this new era of the War Department, the news doesn't just happen, it explodes. This is the reality of 2026. The Pentagon is prepared, the president is expectant, and Iran is in the crosshairs. Now, I want to take a step back. We've covered the immediate breaking news, the adrenaline of the moment, but to truly understand the gravity of what Pete Hegseth said, we have to contextualize this within the broader arc of American military doctrine. When Hegseth refers to the War Department, he is invoking a very specific era of American history. He is invoking the era of Grant, of Stimson, of a time when the military's purpose was unambiguous victory. The shift to defense in 1947 coincided with the Cold War, the rise of the national security state, and the concept of containment. We weren't trying to win against the Soviet Union in a hot war. We were trying to defend the free world from its expansion. By rhetorically pivoting back to war, Hegseth is rejecting the doctrine of containment. He is rejecting the doctrine of managing threats. He is embracing the doctrine of elimination of threats. This connects directly to the Trump doctrine we are seeing unfold in this second term. It is transactional, yes, but it is also deeply punitive. The message to Iran is you broke the rules, you enriched uranium, you cracked down on your people, now you pay the price. It is a punitive expedition mindset, and that is what makes the prepared comment so volatile. A defensive force prepares to repel an attack. A war force prepares to launch one. Let's look at the assets involved in this massive armada. We aren't just talking about a single carrier. Reports indicate that we are seeing the convergence of assets from the Mediterranean and the Pacific. This suggests a global repositioning. The USS Abraham Lincoln, a Nimitz-class carrier, carries an air wing that alone has more firepower than most nations' entire air forces. But it's the support ships that tell the real story, the guided missile cruisers with Tomahawk capabilities. These are the tools of a first strike. They are designed to degrade air defenses from hundreds of miles away, paving the way for the aircraft. And then there is the Midnight Hammer reference. Hegseth brought this up for a reason. June 2025. This was a turning point that largely went underreported in the noise of the election cycle. Limited strikes on nuclear infrastructure. It proved that the U.S. could hit specific, hardened targets inside Iran without triggering a full-scale regional war, at least not immediately. Hegseth is using that success to argue that the escalation ladder theory is wrong. The conventional wisdom says if you hit Iran, they hit back harder, and we end up in Shabawaru. Hegseth is arguing we hit them in June and they took it. We grabbed Maduro in January and they took it. If we hit them again, they will take it again. He believes the Iranian regime is a paper tiger. He believes they are rational actors who value their own survival above all else. If the choice is lose your nuclear program or lose your life and your regime, Hegseth believes they will choose the former. It is a high-stakes game of chicken, and Trump is driving the car. But what about the Iranian perspective? We have to look at the other side of the chessboard. Tehran views this as an existential struggle. They saw what happened to Gaddafi in Libya when he gave up his nuclear program. He ended up dead in a ditch. They saw what happened to Ukraine when they gave up their nukes. Invaded. They look at North Korea, which kept its nukes, and sees the Kim regime still in power. The lesson Iran has learned is never give up the bomb. So when Trump says no nuclear weapons and Hegseth says we are prepared, Iran hears we are coming to kill you like Gaddafi. This means they are unlikely to capitulate. They are more likely to sprint for the finish line. They might try to assemble a warhead and put it on a missile before the armada arrives. Or they might activate their sleeper cells across the region to create so much chaos that the U.S. backs off. Imagine attacks on Saudi oil fields, attacks on the UAE, kidnappings in Beirut, cyber attacks on Wall Street. This is the preparation that the Pentagon needs to be worried about. Is the U.S. homeland prepared for the blowback? Hegseth didn't mention the homeland. He mentioned the War Department. He focused on the offensive capability. This omission is telling. It suggests a compartmentalization of the risk. They are focused on the tactical victory, the strike, the raid, and perhaps underestimating the strategic fallout. We also have to consider the role of intelligence. In the Maduro raid, intelligence was perfect. They knew where he was, when he was there, and how to get him. Iran is a much harder nut to crack. It is a massive country, mountainous, with facilities buried deep underground. The intelligence challenge is immense. Does the U.S. really know where every centrifuge is? Does the U.S. really know where the supreme leader sleeps every night? If the War Department launches a strike based on bad intel and they miss the nukes but kill civilians, the diplomatic fallout will be catastrophic. The coalition that the U.S. relies on, even the quiet support from Arab states, will evaporate. But Hegseth seems unbothered by these nuances. His demeanor in the cabinet meeting was that of a man who trusts his tool. He trusts the hammer. And to a man with a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. The Maduro capture has clearly intoxicated the administration. It was a Hollywood-style success. But geopolitics isn't a movie. You can't write the ending. Hegseth's prepared comment essentially burns the bridge of ambiguity. Usually, nations maintain strategic ambiguity. We might strike, we might not. By saying, we are prepared to deliver whatever the president expects in the context of an ultimatum, he has moved to strategic certainty. He is telling Iran, compliance or war, choose. And he is giving them a very short window to choose. Trump said, time is running out. So, what are the indicators we need to watch in the next 48 to 72 hours? U.S. Embassy alerts. Watch for State Department warnings in the region. If they start evacuating non-essential personnel from Baghdad, Erbil, or Beirut, war is imminent. Airspace closures. If commercial flights start diverting around the Persian Gulf, the notices have gone out. GPS jamming. If we see reports of massive GPS outages in the region, it means the electronic warfare planes are up. The rhetoric from Israel. If Netanyahu goes silent, worry. If he is loud, he is lobbying. If he is quiet, he is preparing. We are living through one of the most dangerous weeks in recent history. The machinery of war is moving. The War Department is online, and the orders are being drafted. This is not a drill. This is the new reality of American power, unapologetic, aggressive, and ready to strike. The question is no longer if something will happen. The question is when and how big the explosion will be. I'm Michael Popak, and I'll be here tracking every development. When the first Tomahawk launches or when the first white flag waves, we will be here to break it down. Don't look away. The history books are being written right now, and the ink is wet.